A soldier returned home early to surprise his young daughter, but froze when he saw her being bullied. He'd dreamed of this moment for months, her smile, her hug, the joy of being home again. Instead, he found heartbreak waiting in the schoolyard. What began as a father's homecoming soon turned into a storm of judgment, rumors, and pain. Now, this wounded hero must fight a new kind of battle, one that can't be won with strength, but with heart. Because when a town turns cold, sometimes it's the smallest hands that teach us how to heal. Can one act of kindness redeem a broken town and help a father find his way home again? The Greyhound's brakes hissed as it rolled to a stop beneath the faded wooden sign that read, "Welcome to Laurel Creek, Tennessee." Sergeant James Porter stood, slinging his duffel bag over one shoulder. His boots hit the pavement with a soft thud. He breathed in deep. Rain, pine, and somewhere far off, the sweet smoke of barbecue drifting from Earl's pit stop down on Main Street. Home. James smiled. A real smile this time. Not the polite half-grin he'd worn through debriefs and handshakes at the base. This one reached his eyes. He adjusted the small wooden box tucked carefully into his jacket pocket and started walking. The streets were quiet at dawn. A newspaper boy rode past on his bicycle, tossing rolled-up papers onto porches. The old hardware store hadn't changed its window display in 3 years. The same faded American flag hung from the barbershop pole. Everything was exactly as he'd left it. Almost everything. James slowed as he passed May's Diner. The neon sign still flickered the same crooked "open" it always had. He could see through the window. The corner booth where he and Sarah used to sit every Sunday after church. She'd order blueberry pancakes. He'd get the biscuits and gravy. Lily would steal bites from both their plates and giggle when syrup dripped down her chin. His chest tightened. 3 years. Cancer had taken her fast. Too fast. He'd barely made it home in time to say goodbye. He kept walking. 2 blocks down, the flower shop's awning came into view. "Petals and Prayers," the hand-painted sign read. Mrs. McCready had owned it for as long as James could remember. Sarah used to buy flowers there every week. Daisies, always daisies. The bell above the door chimed as he stepped inside. The smell of soil and blooms wrapped around him like a hug. Mrs. McCready stood behind the counter, arranging white roses in a glass vase. She looked up. Her hands froze. "James?" Her voice cracked. "Yes, ma'am." The vase clattered onto the counter. She rushed around it, arms outstretched, and pulled him into a tight embrace. She smelled like lavender and old hymns. "You're home," she whispered, pulling back to look at him. Her eyes were wet. "You're really home." "Yes, ma'am. 2 weeks early." He grinned. "Wanted to surprise Lily." Mrs. McCready pressed a hand to her heart. "Oh, that sweet girl. She's going to lose her mind when she sees you." "That's the plan." James glanced toward the buckets of flowers lining the walls. "I need some daisies. Small bunch. Nothing fancy." "Daisies." Mrs. McCready's smile softened. "Just like Sarah. Just like Sarah." She moved to the back, selecting the freshest stems with careful hands. As she wrapped them in brown paper and tied them with twine, she kept glancing at him, like she was making sure he was real. "You look good, James," she said. "Tired, but good." "Thank you, ma'am." She handed him the bouquet. "No charge." "Mrs. McCready." "No charge," she repeated firmly. "You just go surprise that little girl, and tell her I'll have cookies ready when she wants to visit." James nodded, his throat tight. "I will." As he turned to leave, Mrs. McCready called after him. "James?" He looked back. "Welcome home, son." The house was smaller than he remembered. The white paint had chipped near the porch steps. The mailbox leaned slightly to the left. But it was still standing. Still his. James unlocked the door and stepped inside. Dust hung in the air, caught in the pale morning light. The furniture was covered in thin white sheets. His neighbor, Mr. Calloway, had been checking in once a week like James asked, but the house still felt empty, hollow. He set his duffel down and got to work. He pulled the sheets off the couch, the armchair, the small dining table. He wiped down the counters, swept the floors, opened the windows to let fresh air chase out the staleness. He moved to the mantel above the fireplace. The photos were still there, faded now, sun-bleached around the edges. There was one of Sarah holding newborn Lily in the hospital, another of the three of them at the county fair, Lily perched on his shoulders with cotton candy in her fist, and one more, Sarah laughing, her hair catching the light, her eyes full of life. James lifted that one carefully. He wiped the glass clean with his sleeve and set it back in place. "She's grown so much," he whispered. "I hope I did right by her." The house didn't answer, but it felt warmer now. He pulled the wooden jewelry box from his pocket and set it on the kitchen table beside the daisies. The lid was smooth, carved from oak he'd salvaged on base. He'd spent months on it, sanding, polishing, engraving a tiny daisy on the clasp. It wasn't much, but it was hers. James set his alarm for early morning and stood by the window, watching the sun dip below the hills. The sky burned orange and pink. Somewhere in town, Lily was probably finishing dinner, maybe laughing, maybe drawing pictures like she always did. Tomorrow, he'd see her. Tomorrow, everything would start again. Morning light filtered through the blinds, painting golden stripes across the bedroom floor. James stood before the bathroom mirror, razor in hand. He dragged it slowly across his jaw, washing away weeks of stubble. The face staring back at him looked older than he remembered. Lines around his eyes, a scar above his left eyebrow from a toolbox that fell during a convoy repair. But his uniform was pressed, his boots were polished, and today, none of that mattered. Today, he was going to see Lily. He buttoned his jacket carefully, adjusting the patches on his shoulders, the American flag, his unit insignia, the stripes he'd earned over 15 years of service. He tucked the small wooden jewelry box into his jacket pocket and headed out the door. The walk to Laurel Creek Elementary took less than 10 minutes, the same route Sarah used to take when she'd pick Lily up after school. Past the corner store, past the church with the white steeple, past the row of oak trees that turned gold every October. James's heart pounded harder with each step. He could already picture it. Lily's face when she saw him, the way she'd squeal his name, the way she'd run so fast her sneakers would kick up dust, the way she'd crash into his arms and refuse to let go. He smiled. The schoolyard came into view. Parents clustered near the fence, chatting and sipping coffee from thermoses. Children ran across the playground, their laughter rising like bird song. A teacher monitored the sandbox. Another stood by the swings. James stopped at the edge of the fence, scanning the crowd. Where was she? He moved along the perimeter, staying out of sight. He didn't want to draw attention yet. This moment was hers, just hers. Then he saw her. Lily sat alone near the far corner of the playground, her back against the chain-link fence. Her dark hair was pulled into two lopsided braids. She wore the purple jacket he'd sent her for Christmas. Too big still, the sleeves rolled up twice. Her backpack sat beside her, covered in crayon drawings of stars and hearts. She looked so small. James's chest swelled. He ducked behind a large oak tree, planning to wait until she moved closer. Maybe when she stood to join the other kids. Maybe when she walked toward the classroom. He wanted the moment to be perfect. But then 3 boys approached her. James straightened, his smile fading. The tallest one, maybe 10 years old, with a buzz cut and a too-big football jersey, pointed at Lily's shoes. Even from a distance, James could see they were worn. The soles were separating from the fabric. The laces were frayed. The boy said something. His friends laughed. Lily pulled her knees up to her chest, trying to make herself smaller. The second boy crouched down, his voice loud enough to carry. Your shoes are so old they're gonna fall apart. Yeah, the third one added. Doesn't your army dad send you money? Or is he too dead to care? James's jaw tightened. Lily didn't respond. She just stared at the ground, her fingers gripping the straps of her backpack. Maybe he's not even real, the tall boy said. Maybe she made him up. Army orphan, one of them muttered. The other two laughed. Then the tall boy shoved her. Not hard, but enough. Lily stumbled backward, her hands catching her fall against the dirt. Her backpack slipped from her shoulder. She didn't cry out. She didn't fight back. She just sat there, staring at the ground, her lips pressed into a thin line. James didn't think. He stepped out from behind the tree and crossed the playground in 6 long strides. His boots hit the gravel with steady, deliberate thuds. The boys didn't notice him until he was 10 feet away. That's enough, boys. His voice was calm, firm, not loud, but unmistakable. The 3 boys whipped around. Their eyes went wide. One of them stumbled backward. The tall one opened his mouth but didn't speak. They stared at the uniform, the patches, the stripes, the American flag. They scattered. No words, no apologies, just feet kicking up dust as they ran toward the other side of the playground. James exhaled slowly. His hands were shaking. He clenched them into fists, forcing himself to stay steady. Then Lily looked up. Her eyes, dark brown, just like Sarah's, went wide. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Daddy!" Her voice cracked. James knelt down, his knees hitting the gravel. He opened his arms. Lily scrambled to her feet and ran. She crashed into him so hard it nearly knocked him backward. Her arms wrapped around his neck, her face buried against his shoulder. And then she sobbed. Deep, shaking sobs that tore through her small body. James held her tight, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other pressed against her back. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm home." Footsteps rushed toward them. Voices rose. A phone camera clicked. James didn't look up. He just held his daughter, rocking her gently as the whispers spread through the crowd. "That's Sergeant Porter. He just got back. Did you see what he did?" The scene, the one he'd dreamed of for months, felt nothing like he'd imagined. It felt heavy, complicated, and somehow not quite right. Later that afternoon, James sat in Principal Harkins's office, his daughter pressed against his side. Lily's fingers gripped his sleeve so tight the fabric bunched beneath her hand. She hadn't let go since they'd left the playground. The office smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner. Framed certificates lined the walls. A potted fern sat wilting on the filing cabinet. Principal Harkins sat behind her desk, hands folded, her expression polite but guarded. "Sergeant Porter," she began, her voice measured. "Thank you for coming in." James nodded. "Of course. First, let me say we're grateful for your service. Truly." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "And we're glad you're home safely." "Thank you, ma'am." Principal Harkins glanced at Lily, then back at James. "I also want to thank you for stepping in this morning. Bullying is something we take very seriously." James felt Lily shift closer. He rested his hand on her shoulder. "I appreciate that. However," the principal paused, choosing her words carefully. "Some parents found your approach a bit intimidating." James blinked. "Intimidating? Your presence, your uniform, the way you addressed the children?" She gestured vaguely. "I know you didn't raise your voice. I know you didn't touch anyone. But the situation drew quite a bit of attention. I was protecting my daughter. I understand that. But some parents feel their children were frightened." James's jaw tightened. He forced himself to breathe slowly. "I never raised my voice. I didn't threaten anyone. I just told them to stop." "I believe you." Principal Harkins leaned forward slightly. "But perception matters, Sergeant. And right now, there are parents asking questions." Lily's fingers dug deeper into his sleeve. James looked down at her. Her face was pale, Her eyes were wide. "Am I in trouble?" she whispered. "No, sweetheart," he said softly. "You're not in trouble." Principal Harkins folded her hands again. "No one's in trouble. We just want to make sure everyone feels safe moving forward." James didn't respond. He didn't trust himself to. "I'm sure this will blow over quickly," the principal added. "We just wanted to have this conversation, to clear the air." James stood, his hand still on Lily's shoulder. "Is that all?" "That's all." He guided Lily toward the door. She kept her eyes on the floor, her hand still clutching his sleeve. As they stepped into the hallway, Principal Harkins called after them. "Sergeant Porter!" He turned. "Welcome home." James nodded once, then walked his daughter out of the building. At home, James tried to shake it off. He unpacked his duffel bag. He made sandwiches for lunch. He asked Lily about her classes, her friends, her favorite books. She answered quietly, her voice small. When she finished eating, she looked up at him, her fingers tracing circles on the table. "Daddy?" "Yeah, sweetheart?" "Am I in trouble?" "No." He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You didn't do anything wrong." "But the principal, she was just being careful. That's her job." Lily nodded, but she didn't look convinced. James's phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at it, then picked it up. A notification from a local community group. Someone had tagged him. He opened the app. The first thing he saw was the photo. It showed him kneeling in the schoolyard, his face stern, his jaw set. Lily was a blur in the background. The three boys were nowhere to be seen. The caption read, "Soldier scares kids at schoolyard. Is this appropriate?" James's chest tightened. He scrolled down. The comments had already started. He didn't have to get involved like that. Those were just kids. He could have handled it differently. "My son said he was terrified. Thank you for your service, but this isn't war. It's a playground." James's hand trembled. He set the phone down. Lily was watching him. "Daddy?" "It's nothing, sweetheart." But it wasn't nothing. By evening, more neighbors had joined the conversation. Some defended him. Most debated. A few called him a hero. Others questioned his judgment. His phone buzzed again. A text from Mrs. McCready. "James, I saw the post. Are you okay? Call me if you need to talk." He didn't respond. He just stared at the screen. Lily came into the kitchen, the wooden jewelry box clutched in both hands. "Did they think you were mean?" James looked at her. Her eyes were red. Her voice was barely a whisper. He knelt down and pulled her into a hug. "No, sweetheart. They just don't understand. But you weren't mean. You were helping me." "I know." She pressed her face against his shoulder. "I'm sorry, Daddy." "You have nothing to be sorry for." But she didn't let go. That night, Lily fell asleep on the couch, still clutching the jewelry box. James covered her with a blanket, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She looked so peaceful, so small. He sat down in the armchair across from her and picked up his phone. The post was still there. The comments had multiplied. The photo stared back at him, frozen in time, stripped of context, reduced to a moment of judgment. James's hand trembled. The glow of the screen flickered across his face, casting shadows that danced like firelight from a memory he couldn't escape. The next morning, James woke to voices outside. He sat up, disoriented. Sunlight streamed through the curtains. Lily was still asleep on the couch, the jewelry box resting on her chest. The voices grew louder. James walked to the window and looked out. Two people stood on his front lawn. A man with a camera, a woman holding a notepad. Reporters. His stomach dropped. He moved away from the window and went to wake Lily. She stirred, blinking up at him. "Daddy?" "It's okay, sweetheart. Just stay inside for a bit." "Why?" Before he could answer, someone knocked on the door. Lily sat up, clutching the jewelry box. James walked to the door and opened it halfway, stepping outside and pulling it closed behind him. The woman smiled. "Sergeant Porter?" "Yes." "I'm Rachel Kim with the Clarksville Courier." We're doing a story about yesterday's incident at the school. Do you have a moment? No. The man with the camera raised it. James stepped to the side, blocking the lens. Sergeant Porter, Rachel continued, her voice smooth and practiced. Were you angry when you confronted those children? I wasn't angry. Do you regret your actions? James's jaw tightened. I don't regret protecting my daughter. The man snapped a photo. The flash made James flinch. The door opened behind him. Lily peeked out, her eyes wide. Rachel's expression softened. Is that your daughter? Stay inside, Lily, James said quietly. But Lily didn't move. She stood frozen, half hidden behind the doorframe. Rachel knelt slightly, addressing her directly. Sweetie, were you scared when your dad? That's enough. James stepped between them. You need to leave. Now. Rachel stood, her smile fading. We're just trying to tell the story, Sergeant. There's no story. Please leave my property. The man took another photo. James's hands clenched into fists. He forced himself to breathe, to stay calm. Rachel handed him a business card. If you'd like to give your side, call me. James didn't take it. She set it on the porch railing and walked away. The man followed, still snapping pictures. James watched them get into their car and drive off. Then he turned and found Lily standing in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. He knelt and pulled her into his arms. It's okay, he whispered. They're gone. But she was shaking. That afternoon, an email arrived from the school board. They requested a written statement about the incident. James read it twice, then closed his laptop. An hour later, he received a text from Mrs. McCready. Community meeting tonight at the church. Might be good for you to be there. James didn't want to go, but he couldn't hide. The community center was packed. Folding chairs lined the room. Parents filled the seats, their faces turned toward the front, where Principal Harkins stood beside a table of school board members. James sat in the back row, his hands folded in his lap. A few people glanced at him. Some nodded. Others looked away. Principal Harkins welcomed everyone and explained the purpose of the meeting, to discuss school safety and community concerns. James listened quietly as parents voiced their opinions. Most were supportive. A few were cautious. Then Mrs. Dalton stood. She was tall, her hair pulled back tight. Her expression was sharp. I'd like to address Sergeant Porter directly, she said. The room fell silent. James's chest tightened. He didn't move. Mrs. Dalton turned to face him. My son came home yesterday terrified. He said a soldier yelled at him, cornered him, made him feel like he'd done something terrible. I didn't yell, James said quietly. You intimidated him. You traumatized him. Her voice rose. Those were children. Children. They were bullying my daughter. So you decided to police the playground? Mrs. Dalton's eyes flashed. We don't need soldiers doing that. This isn't a war zone. The words hit like a punch. James forced himself to stay calm. I'm sorry if my presence scared your son. That wasn't my intention. Your intention doesn't matter. What matters is what happened. Principal Harkins stood. Mrs. Dalton, let's keep this respectful. Respectful? Mrs. Dalton turned to her. He scared children. And now we're supposed to pretend everything's fine? James stood. I apologized. I don't know what else you want me to say. I want you to admit you were wrong. The room was silent. James looked at her, then at the faces around him. Some sympathetic, some uncertain, some closed off entirely. He sat down. Mrs. Dalton stared at him a moment longer, then returned to her seat. The meeting continued, but James didn't hear it. He just sat there, his hands trembling in his lap. That night, James sat at the kitchen table, his medals spread out before him. He polished each one slowly, methodically. The familiar routine calmed him, grounded him. Lily appeared in the doorway, her pajamas wrinkled, her hair messy from sleep. Daddy? He looked up. Can't sleep, sweetheart. She shook her head and crossed the room. She climbed into his lap and wrapped her arms around his neck. He held her close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo. After a moment, she pulled back and slipped something into his shirt pocket. "What's this?" he asked. "Just for later." She kissed his cheek, then slid off his lap and padded back toward her room. James watched her go. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He unfolded it under the kitchen light. The handwriting was shaky but careful, each letter formed with concentration. "Dad, please don't fight. Just help me be brave." James stared at the note. His vision blurred. A tear slid down his cheek. Then another. He pressed the note to his chest and whispered, "All right, sweetheart. We'll do it your way." The next morning, James dressed in jeans and a worn jacket. No uniform, no medals, just a father walking his daughter to school. Lily held his hand as they walked down the sidewalk. The morning air was cool and fresh. Birds sang from the trees. They passed Mrs. McCready's flower shop. She stood outside watering her hanging baskets. "Good morning," she called, waving. James waved back. "Morning, Mrs. McCready." Lily smiled and waved too. They continued down the street. Mr. Patterson was getting into his truck. He glanced at James, then looked away quickly and climbed inside. Mrs. Chen was sweeping her porch. She saw them and gave a small, shy smile before going back to her work. James kept walking, kept his head up. When they reached the school, Lily hugged him tight. "I'll see you this afternoon," he said. "Okay, Daddy." She ran toward the playground where a few girls were playing jump rope. One of them waved at Lily. She waved back. James watched her go, relief flooding through him. She wasn't alone today. After leaving the school, James walked through town with no particular destination. His feet carried him toward the park. The Veterans Memorial sat near the edge of the green space, shaded by old oak trees. James had passed it 100 times growing up. It had always been well kept, respected. Not anymore. The bronze plaque was tarnished, covered in grime. The wooden benches were cracked and peeling. Weeds grew between the stones. Someone had left a crumpled soda can on the ground. James stood there for a long moment. Then he picked up the can and looked around for a trash bin. There wasn't one nearby. He slipped the can into his jacket pocket and knelt beside the plaque. He pulled off his jacket and used the sleeve to wipe away the dirt. The names appeared slowly. Men who'd served. Men who hadn't come home. He recognized a few. Friends of his father. Neighbors. Good men. Looks like it could use some work. James turned. An older man stood behind him, hands in his pockets. He was thin and weathered, maybe 70, with white hair and sharp blue eyes. "Mr. Hollis?" James said. The man nodded. "Heard you were back." James stood and brushed off his knees. "Yes, sir?" Mr. Hollis had been the town postman for 40 years before retiring. He was also a Korean War veteran. James remembered him from Memorial Day ceremonies when he was a kid. Hollis looked at the memorial. Shame what's happened to it. "Yeah. You planning to fix it?" James glanced around. "I was thinking about it." Hollis walked closer and examined the benches. "These'll need sanding, repainting, probably new screws." "I can handle that," Hollis grunted. "I'll get my tools." "You don't have to." "I know I don't." Hollis turned and started walking toward his house across the street. "Be back in 10. James watched him go. Then he smiled. By noon, they'd cleaned the plaque and started sanding the benches. Hollis worked steadily, saying little but moving with practiced efficiency. James matched his pace, falling into the rhythm of the work. It felt good, purposeful. 2 kids on bikes stopped nearby. They watched for a moment, then one of them called out, "What are you doing?" James looked up. He recognized them from Lily's class. "Fixing the memorial," he said. The boy tilted his head. "Why?" "Because it needs it." The kids exchanged glances. Then the girl said, "Can we help?" James smiled. "Sure." You know how to paint? No. I'll teach you. By the time Hollis went home for lunch, the benches were sanded smooth and the first coat of paint was drying. The two kids, Emma and Tyler, sat on the grass drinking juice boxes James had bought from the corner store. My grandpa's name is on there, Emma said, pointing at the plaque. James looked at her. Yeah? He died before I was born. I'm sorry. She shrugged. My mom says he was brave. I'm sure he was. Tyler wiped paint off his hands. Are you brave? James paused. I try to be. Mrs. Dalton says you're scary. Emma elbowed him. Tyler! What? She did. James looked at the boy. Do I seem scary to you? Tyler studied him. No. You seem nice. James smiled. Thanks, buddy. That evening, James and Lily stood in the kitchen baking cookies. Chocolate chip. Lily's favorite. She stood on a stool beside him, carefully dropping spoonfuls of dough onto the baking sheet. Who are these for? She asked. The neighbors. Her eyes widened. Really? Really. Even the mean ones? James nodded. Especially the mean ones. Why? He knelt beside her. Because kindness is louder than hate. She thought about that. Louder? Mm-hmm. Hate is loud and fast, but it goes away quick. Kindness is quiet, but it lasts. Lily smiled. Like how you remember Mama's hugs? James's chest tightened. Yeah, sweetheart. Just like that. They delivered the cookies after dinner. James carried the plate while Lily knocked on doors. At the first house, Mr. Patterson answered. He looked surprised. Evening, James said. Lily and I made some cookies. Thought you might like some. Patterson hesitated. Then he took one. Thank you. Lily beamed. At the second house, Mrs. Chen teared up and hugged Lily. At the third house, nobody answered. At the fourth house, Mrs. Dalton opened the door. She froze when she saw them. James held out the plate. Evening, Mrs. Dalton. We made cookies. She stared at him, then at Lily. Lily smiled shyly. They're chocolate chip. Mrs. Dalton's expression softened slightly. She took a cookie. Thank you. You're welcome, Lily said. Mrs. Dalton closed the door without another word. James let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. As they walked home under the streetlights, Lily slipped her hand into his. Daddy? Yeah. Sweetheart. Do you think people will stop being mean? James looked up at the stars scattered across the night sky. They glittered like promises. He squeezed her hand gently. They will, when we show them how. Lily smiled. They walked the rest of the way home hand in hand, their shadows stretching long beneath the soft glow of the streetlights. A week later, the memorial looked different. The benches gleamed with fresh paint. The plaque shined in the sunlight. New flags stood tall beside the stone marker, flapping gently in the breeze. James stepped back and wiped his forehead. His shirt was damp with sweat, but he smiled. Looks good, Mr. Hollis said beside him. It does. They'd worked on it every afternoon, sometimes alone, sometimes with volunteers. Yesterday, Mrs. McCready had shown up with 3 cans of paint she'd ordered from the hardware store. On the house, she'd said, pressing them into James's hands. It's the least I can do. This morning, Hollis had arrived carrying 4 new flags in plastic sleeves. Found them in my garage, he'd muttered. Figured they belonged here. Now the memorial looked the way James remembered from his childhood. Proud, honored, loved. A woman approached with a camera. She worked for the local newspaper. Mr. Porter? She called. James turned. Mind if I take a picture? He hesitated. I'm not sure that's... Please, Daddy, Lily said, tugging his hand. It's for the heroes. James looked down at her. Then he nodded. They stood beside the memorial together, hand in hand. The photographer snapped several shots. Perfect, she said. This'll run in tomorrow's paper. The next morning, James bought a copy at the corner store. There they were on the front page. He and Lily standing beside the restored memorial, both smiling. The headline read, Father and Daughter Bring Hope to Heroes Park. James stared at it for a long moment. hope. He folded the paper carefully and carried it home. 2 days later, Lily came home from school with a note. James read it while stirring spaghetti sauce on the stove. It was from her teacher, Miss Reynolds. She was inviting Lily to share her story during Hero Week, a special assembly where students talked about people they admired. "What do you think?" Lily asked nervously. James knelt beside her. "Do you want to do it?" "I think so. But what if I mess up?" "You won't mess up." "What if people laugh?" James touched her cheek gently. "Then they're not listening with their hearts." She looked at him with those wide, trusting eyes. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll do it." The next morning, James walked Lily to school as usual, but this time Principal Harkins was waiting near the entrance. "Mr. Porter," she said, "may I speak with you?" James nodded. They stepped aside while Lily ran to join her friends on the playground. "I heard about the Hero Week invitation," Harkins said. "I wanted to make sure you're comfortable with it." James studied her. "Are you?" She hesitated. "There were some concerns last week, some parents—" "I understand. But," she continued, "I also believe in second chances. And what you've done at the memorial, it's meant something to this community." James waited. "So yes," Harkins said, "I'm comfortable with it. In fact, I think it's exactly what we need." Relief washed through him. "Thank you." She smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Porter." At recess that afternoon, Lily sat on the swings with Emma. They were talking about what book to read next when someone approached. Tommy Dalton stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets. Lily stopped swinging. Emma glared at him. "Go away, Tommy." But Tommy didn't move. He looked at the ground. I wanted to say something," he stammered. Lily waited. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "for being mean, for pushing you, for saying those things about your dad." Lily blinked. Tommy shuffled his feet. "My mom said what you and your dad are doing at the park is really nice. She said I should apologize." "Did she make you?" Lily asked. Tommy shook his head. "No, I wanted to, because—" He looked up. "Because you're nice, and I wasn't, and I'm sorry." Lily stood from the swing. She walked over to him. Tommy looked scared. Then Lily smiled. "It's okay. I forgive you." "Really?" "Really. Dad says being brave means being kind first." Tommy stared at her. Then he smiled too. "Your dad's cool." "I know." Emma joined them. "You want to play kickball?" Tommy's eyes lit up. "Yeah!" They ran off together toward the field. That evening, James sat at the kitchen table checking his email. One message stood out. It was from Superintendent Grace Miller. He opened it. "Dear Sergeant Porter, we've heard wonderful things about your work at the memorial and the positive impact you've had on our community. We would be honored if you would speak at our Hero Week assembly alongside your daughter. It would mean a great deal to our students and to us. Sincerely, Grace Miller." James read it twice. Then he closed his laptop and leaned back in his chair. Redemption. That's what this felt like. The town finally seeing him, not as a threat, not as a stranger, but as one of them. Later that night, James tucked Lily into bed. She yawned and snuggled under the blankets. "Daddy?" "Yeah, sweetheart? Are you going to talk at the assembly too?" "Looks like it." She grinned. "Good. Everyone should hear you." He kissed her forehead. "Next week, you'll see what happens when people believe in good again." She reached up and touched the dog tags hanging around his neck. She'd asked to hold them earlier, and he'd let her keep them. Now she clutched them in her small hand as her eyes drifted closed. "Love you, Daddy," she whispered. "Love you too, Lily." He watched her breathe, peaceful and safe. Then he turned off the light and quietly closed the door. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen window. James stood at the counter, staring at his handwritten speech. He'd practiced it a dozen times last night, kept it simple, honest. "I came home to be a father, to teach my daughter that courage isn't about fighting. It's about choosing kindness when the world tells you to be hard. He whispered the words again, his voice catching slightly. "Daddy?" He turned. Lily stood in the doorway wearing a floral dress, pale blue with tiny white flowers, Sarah's favorite pattern. "You look beautiful," he said. She smiled shyly. "Can you braid my hair, like Mom used to?" James's throat tightened. "Yeah, come here." She sat on the chair while he gathered her hair gently. His hands remembered the motions Sarah had taught him years ago, laughing when he fumbled the first attempts. "Over, under, pull through," she'd said. "See? You're a natural." Now his fingers moved carefully, weaving the strands together. "Does it look right?" Lily asked. "Perfect." She touched the braid. "Mom would have liked today." James tied the end with a small ribbon. "She would have been so proud of you." Lily turned and hugged him. "I miss her." "Me too, sweetheart. Every day." They stayed like that for a moment, holding each other in the quiet kitchen. Then James pulled back and smiled. "Ready?" "Ready." They walked to school hand in hand. The morning felt different somehow. Heavier. James noticed it first near the corner store. Two mothers stood talking by a car. When they saw him, their conversation stopped. One glanced away quickly. "Morning," James said, nodding politely. They didn't respond. He kept walking. At the school entrance, a group of parents clustered near the fence. Their voices were low, urgent. When James and Lily approached, they went quiet. Lily squeezed his hand tighter. "It's okay," James whispered, but it didn't feel okay. Inside, the hallway buzzed with activity. Students carried posters for Hero Week. Teachers hung decorations. Everything looked festive and bright. Yet the parents who passed James avoided his eyes. "Mr. Porter," someone called. Principal Harkins hurried toward them, her expression strained. "Could I speak with you? Privately?" James looked down at Lily. "Go find Miss Reynolds, okay? I'll be right there." Lily hesitated, then nodded and walked toward her classroom. Harkins led him to her office. Superintendent Miller was already there, sitting stiffly in one of the chairs. James's stomach dropped. "Please, sit," Miller said. He sat. Harkins closed the door. The room felt too small suddenly. "Mr. Porter," Miller began carefully, "we need to discuss this morning's assembly." James waited. "There's been some concern," she continued, "from parents about your participation." "What kind of concern?" Miller folded her hands. "A post circulated online last night. It suggested that your recent community work was strategic, a publicity effort to improve your image after the playground incident." James stared at her. "That's not true." "I understand that," Harkins said quickly. "But the post gained significant attention. Several parents contacted us overnight, expressing discomfort with you speaking at the assembly." His hands clenched. "I've done nothing but try to help." "We know," Miller said. "But given the circumstances, we feel it's best to postpone the event. Just until things settle." James couldn't breathe. "Postpone. Temporarily. What about Lily?" Harkins looked pained. "She won't be speaking either." "Not today." The words hit like a fist. James stood slowly. "You're punishing her." "No one's being punished," Miller said. "We're simply being cautious." "Cautious." James's voice was flat. "My daughter forgave the kids who bullied her. She baked cookies for neighbors who wouldn't look at us. And now you're telling her she can't share that because someone posted lies online?" Harkins looked away. Miller stood. "Mr. Porter, please understand." "I understand perfectly." He walked out. Lily was waiting in the hallway, clutching her backpack. "Daddy?" He knelt beside her. "Come on, sweetheart. We're going home." Her face crumpled. "But the assembly." "It's postponed." "Why?" James couldn't answer. His throat was too tight. They walked home in silence. Back at the house, James made lunch. Grilled cheese and tomato soup. Lily sat at the table, staring at her plate. She didn't eat. Outside, clouds gathered. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder. James stood by the window, watching water stream down the glass. "Some battles you can't win," he said quietly, "no matter how kind you are." Behind him, Lily's chair scraped against the floor. He turned. Tears ran down her cheeks. Her small hands were clenched into fists. "Then I'll win it for you." Before he could respond, she ran upstairs. Her bedroom door closed. James stood alone in the kitchen, listening to the rain. The rain didn't let up. By evening, it hammered against the windows like angry fists. Thunder rolled across the sky, deep and rumbling. Lily sat at the kitchen table with her crayons spread out. She was coloring a picture, the Veterans Memorial, bright and beautiful. She'd drawn flowers around the base, and a sun shining overhead. In the living room, James lay on the couch. He hadn't meant to fall asleep, just closed his eyes for a moment. But exhaustion pulled him under. The dreams came fast. Desert heat. The smell of burning oil. Shouting voices over radio static. "Sergeant, we need cover fire." An explosion. Dust everywhere. Someone screaming. James's hands twitched. His breathing quickened. "We lost contact with 2nd Platoon." "Get down! Get down!" Another blast. Closer this time. Then Sarah's face, pale in a hospital bed, her hand reaching for his. "Take care of our girl." His voice broke in his sleep. I tried, Sarah." Thunder cracked outside. James turned on the couch, muttering now. "I shouldn't have come back." In the kitchen, Lily's crayon froze mid-stroke. She looked toward the living room. "I shouldn't have come back." Her father's voice was thick with pain. She set down the crayon carefully, stood, walked to the doorway. James lay there, his face twisted, one arm hanging off the couch. "I shouldn't." He trailed off into silence. Lily's eyes filled with tears. He was sad because of her. Because she'd caused problems at school. Because people were mean to him now. If she hadn't been bullied, none of this would have happened. She backed away slowly, her small fists clenched. She went upstairs to her room, grabbed her yellow raincoat from the closet, found the flashlight Dad kept in her nightstand drawer. Then she stopped at her desk, picked up a marker. On a piece of paper she wrote carefully, "I'm fixing it. I love you, Daddy." She left the note on her pillow. The back door creaked as she slipped outside. Rain soaked through her coat immediately. The flashlight beam wobbled as she ran down the street, her shoes splashing through puddles. She knew where she was going. The memorial. The place Dad had worked so hard to restore. If she could make it perfect, really perfect, then maybe people would see. Maybe they'd stop being mean. Maybe Dad would smile again. She ran faster, the storm swallowing her small figure in darkness. James woke with a gasp. His heart pounded. Sweat covered his face despite the cool air. He sat up, disoriented. The living room was dark except for the dim glow from the kitchen. "Lily?" No answer. He stood, his legs unsteady. "Lily? Sweetheart?" Still nothing. He walked to the kitchen. Her crayons were scattered across the table. The picture of the memorial sat there, half-finished. "Lily?" He checked the downstairs bathroom. Empty. He took the stairs 2 at a time. "Lily!" Her bedroom door was open. The room was empty. His eyes found the note on her pillow. "I'm fixing it. I love you, Daddy." Terror shot through him like ice water. He grabbed his phone with shaking hands and dialed. "Sheriff Reynolds? It's James Porter. My daughter. She's gone." Within 20 minutes, the street was full of vehicles. Sheriff Reynolds arrived first, followed by deputies. Then neighbors started appearing. Mrs. McCready, with her husband, Mr. Hollis in a rain slicker, even some of the parents from school. James stood in the rain, his voice hoarse. She left a note. Said she was fixing something. I think the memorial. She might have gone to the memorial. Reynolds nodded sharply. Everyone split up. Groups of 3. Check every street between here and the park. Stay on your radios. Flashlights clicked on. The search began. James ran. His feet pounded against wet pavement. Rain blurred his vision, but he didn't slow down. Behind him, voices called Lily's name. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness like searchlights, but all James could hear was his own breathing, his own heartbeat. Please, please, let her be safe. He reached the park entrance and kept running, cutting across the grass toward the memorial. Thunder crashed overhead. "Lily!" His voice tore through the storm. The memorial site appeared ahead. The benches he'd repaired, the plaque he'd polished. "Lily!" He swung his flashlight in wide arcs, searching desperately. "Lily, where are you?" Rain poured harder. James stumbled forward, his chest heaving, his eyes scanning every shadow. "Lily!" His voice cracked. "Lily!" The flashlight beam swung left, then right. Nothing but rain and shadows. James's breath came in ragged gasps. His uniform was soaked through, clinging to his skin. "Lily!" He moved deeper into the park, toward the memorial canopy they'd restored together. Then his flashlight caught something, a splash of yellow. His heart stopped. There, under the canopy's shelter, barely visible in the darkness, sat a small figure in a bright yellow raincoat. "Lily!" He ran. His boots splashed through puddles, water spraying with every step. As he got closer, the flashlight beam steadied on her face. She sat cross-legged on the memorial steps, drenched despite the canopy. Her hair hung in wet strings. Her hands clutched something against her chest. A cardboard sign. Written in marker, the letters smeared but still readable. "My dad's not scary. He's my hero." James's knees buckled. He dropped to the ground in front of her, his flashlight falling to the side. "Lily, baby, what were you—" His voice broke. She looked up at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. "I wanted them to see, Daddy. I wanted everyone to know." James pulled her into his arms, wrapping his coat around her tiny, shivering body. "Oh, sweetheart. Oh, my sweet girl." He pressed his face into her wet hair and wept. Great, shuddering sobs that shook his whole body. All the pain, all the shame, all the loneliness he'd carried for months, it poured out in the rain. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "I'm so sorry. You should never have felt like you had to." "I love you, Daddy," Lily whispered against his chest. He held her tighter. Behind them, flashlights appeared through the trees. Sheriff Reynolds's voice crackled over the radio. "We've got her! Repeat! We've got her! Memorial site!" Cheers erupted from different directions. Within moments, searchers emerged from the darkness. Neighbors, deputies, parents. Mrs. McCready pressed a hand to her mouth, crying openly. Mr. Hollis removed his hat, relief written across his weathered face. Even parents who'd been distant before came running, their faces tight with concern. James stood slowly, still cradling Lily in his arms. Her sign slipped from her hands and fell to the wet ground. Sheriff Reynolds reached them first. "Thank God. Is she hurt?" "Just cold," James managed. "Just scared." Reynolds radioed for blankets. More people gathered around. Mrs. McCready rushed forward with a thick quilt, draping it over Lily's shoulders. "Oh, sweet child, you gave us such a fright." Lily peeked out from under the quilt, her teeth chattering. "I'm sorry." "Don't you apologize," Mrs. McCready said firmly. "Not for 1 second." The crowd parted. A woman stepped forward, her face streaked with rain and tears. "Mrs. Dalton." She stopped a few feet away, her hands trembling. Her eyes went to the sign on the ground, then to Lily, then to James. Her voice came out broken. "I'm sorry." James looked at her. "I'm so sorry," she said again, her words tumbling out. I was scared and angry, and I took it out on you when you didn't deserve it." She wiped her eyes roughly. "My husband was a soldier too. He came home different. He couldn't talk about it. And one day, She couldn't finish. James's expression softened. Mrs. Dalton's voice dropped to a whisper. "I thought If I could protect Tommy from anything military, from anything that reminded me of... But I was wrong. I was so wrong. She looked at Lily, fresh tears spilling over. You're a brave girl. Braver than I've been in a long time. Lily's small voice came from under the quilt. My dad's brave, too. Mrs. Dalton nodded, unable to speak. James shifted Lily's weight in his arms. It's all right, he said quietly. We all carry things we don't know how to put down. The woman's face crumpled. Sheriff Reynolds stepped forward gently. Let's get this little one home and warmed up. We can talk more later. James nodded. He turned toward the parking lot, holding Lily close. The crowd parted to let them through. As they walked, people reached out. Brief touches on his shoulder, whispered blessings, murmured apologies. James kept walking, his daughter safe in his arms. By the time they reached the sheriff's truck, the rain had softened to a drizzle. James climbed into the passenger seat, Lily still wrapped in blankets on his lap. Sheriff Reynolds got behind the wheel and started the engine, cranking the heat. You scared 10 years off my life, kiddo, Reynolds said, glancing at Lily in the rearview mirror. She managed a small smile. The truck pulled away from the park. Through the windshield, the first hints of dawn began to appear. A faint glow on the horizon, soft and pink. The rain stopped completely. James looked down at his daughter, her eyes already drooping with exhaustion. I love you more than anything in this world, he whispered. Lily's hand found his. I know, Daddy. The sky grew lighter. Pink became gold, and for the first time in a long time, James believed everything might actually be okay. Morning light filtered through the hospital curtains, soft and golden. Lily lay propped against pillows, a thick blanket tucked around her legs. Steam rose from the mug of hot cocoa in her small hands. She took a careful sip, then smiled at her father. James sat in the chair beside her bed, his elbows on his knees, exhaustion written in every line of his face, but his eyes were bright with gratitude. How you feeling, sweetheart? Warm, Lily said. And sleepy. The doctor said you just need rest. No pneumonia, thank God. She nodded, taking another sip. The door opened quietly. A nurse peeked in. You have visitors, if you're up for it? James glanced at Lily. She nodded. Mrs. McCready came through first, carrying a vase of fresh daisies. Her eyes immediately filled with tears. Oh, precious girl. She set the flowers on the bedside table and took Lily's hand. You gave us all such a scare. I'm sorry, Lily whispered. Hush now. No apologies. Mrs. McCready squeezed her hand gently. You were so brave. So very brave. Mr. Hollis followed, hat in hand, his gruff exterior softened. Heard you were making signs in the rain, kid. That's dedication. Lily giggled. He pulled a small toy soldier from his pocket and placed it on her tray table. Keep that. Reminds you that real soldiers protect with their hearts, not just their hands. James's throat tightened. More visitors came. 2 of Lily's teachers brought cards from her classmates. A neighbor brought cookies. The librarian brought books. Each one apologized. Each one thanked James for his patience. Each one promised to help however they could. Then Principal Harkins arrived. She stood at the foot of the bed, hands clasped tightly. Lily, Mr. Porter, I owe you both an apology. I should have stood up for what was right from the beginning. James met her eyes. You're here now. That's what matters. She nodded, her expression grateful. The school board voted this morning. We'd like to reschedule Hero Week, and we'd like both of you to be the guests of honor. Lily's eyes widened. Really? Really, Harkins said. If you're willing. James looked at his daughter. She nodded eagerly. We'd be honored, he said. Principal Harkins smiled. Thank you. Both of you. The room quieted after she left. Lily finished her cocoa and set the mug down. Daddy, do you think people really changed? James thought about that. I think people always had good hearts. They were just scared, and sometimes fear makes us forget how to be kind. She considered this. So we helped them remember? You did, sweetheart. You reminded everyone, including me. She leaned her head against his arm. A soft knock came at the door. James looked up. Mrs. Dalton stood in the doorway, her son Tommy beside her. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Mrs. Dalton stepped inside, her hands trembling slightly. Tommy followed, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers wrapped in newspaper. He approached Lily's bed slowly, his face nervous. I brought you flowers. I'm sorry I was mean. Lily smiled. It's okay. No, it's not. His voice cracked. I was awful, and I'm really, really sorry. Lily took the bouquet. Thank you, Tommy. They're pretty. He nodded, looking at his shoes. Mrs. Dalton moved closer, her eyes red-rimmed. In her hands, she carried a folded American flag, worn but carefully preserved. She stopped beside James's chair. This belonged to my husband, she said softly. Her voice shook. He served 2 tours. He came home different, and I didn't know how to help him. James stood slowly. He died 3 years ago, she continued, and I've been so angry. At the military, at anyone who reminded me of what I lost. I blamed soldiers like you when I should have. Her voice broke. I should have honored them. Honored him. She held out the flag. Maybe it belongs at the memorial now, with the others, so people remember that courage costs something, and that we should never forget the ones who paid. James's eyes blurred with tears. He took the flag gently, holding it with both hands. The fabric felt sacred, heavy with sacrifice and memory. This is an honor, he said quietly. Thank you. Mrs. Dalton wiped her eyes. Maybe we can build something new together. Something that helps people understand. James nodded, tears spilling over. Maybe we can build something new together. He extended his hand. She took it. And for a long moment, 2 people who'd been divided by pain stood connected by hope. 2 weeks later, the entire town gathered at the park. Flags lined the walkway, red, white, and blue snapping in the warm breeze. Children ran across the grass, their laughter bright against the hum of conversation. The memorial gleamed with fresh polish, every surface carefully restored. Volunteers had rebuilt the benches. Fresh flowers bloomed in beds around the stone monument. Small brass plaques hung on wooden posts, each one bearing the name of a local veteran. Some living, some long gone, all honored. James stood at the edge of the crowd, his heart full. Mrs. McCready squeezed his shoulder. You did good, son. We all did, he said. Mr. Hollis adjusted the flags one last time, then gave James a nod. Ready? James took a deep breath. Ready? Lily appeared at his side, wearing a yellow dress her mother had bought for her years ago. She'd grown into it now. Her hair was braided neatly, and she carried a folded piece of paper. Her speech. You nervous? James asked. She shook her head. Not anymore. He smiled and took her hand. The crowd quieted as Principal Harkins stepped to the podium. Thank you all for coming today, she said. This memorial has stood in our town for decades, but it took a father and daughter to remind us what it truly represents. Sacrifice, love, and the courage to choose kindness over conflict. Applause rippled through the gathering. Please join me in welcoming Sergeant James Porter. James walked to the podium, Lily beside him. He looked out at the faces, neighbors, teachers, strangers who'd become friends. Mrs. Dalton stood near the front, Tommy at her side. James cleared his throat. I didn't plan to give a speech when I came home, he began. I just wanted to surprise my daughter, to hold her and tell her I missed her. His voice caught. Instead, I learned something I should have known all along. Coming home isn't just about arriving. It's about staying. It's about choosing to love people, even when they don't understand you, even when you don't understand yourself." He paused, gathering his thoughts. For a long time, I thought courage meant being strong, being unshakable, never backing down. He looked down at Lily. But my daughter taught me something different. She showed me that real courage means loving people who didn't love you back. It means forgiving when it's hard. It means building instead of breaking. Lily's eyes shone with tears. "This memorial isn't just about the past," James continued. "It's about now. It's about all of us choosing to honor sacrifice, not with arguments or anger, but with unity, with grace, with hope." He stepped back from the podium. The crowd erupted in applause. James knelt beside Lily and whispered, "Your turn, sweetheart." She nodded, stepping forward. The podium was too tall for her, so Mr. Hollis brought out a wooden step. Lily climbed up, her small hands gripping the edges of the stand. The crowd quieted again. "Hi," Lily said softly. A few people chuckled gently. She unfolded her paper, her voice gaining strength. "My name is Lily Porter. My dad is a soldier. My mom was a hero too. She taught me that love is stronger than anything." She paused, looking at the words she'd written. "When I was scared at school, I thought being brave meant not crying. But my dad taught me that being brave means something else. It means loving people who didn't love you back." Mrs. Dalton's eyes filled with tears. "It means forgiving," Lily continued. "It means helping. It means saying sorry even when it's hard." She looked up at the crowd. "This memorial is for everyone who chose to be brave. Not just soldiers, but teachers and parents and kids who said sorry. People who helped build this place together." Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. "My dad says courage isn't loud. It's love that refuses to give up." She folded her paper. "Thank you." The applause started softly, then grew. People rose to their feet, clapping until the sound echoed across the park. Lily stepped down, and James scooped her into his arms. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered. "Did I do good?" "You did perfect." The local choir stepped forward, their voices rising in harmony. "Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain." The crowd joined in, voices blending, young and old, soft and strong. James held Lily close, his throat tight with emotion. Mrs. Dalton stood nearby, tears streaming down her face. She reached over and squeezed James's arm. No words were needed. For the first time since coming home, James felt it, truly felt it. He was home, not because the town finally understood him, not because people finally saw him as more than a uniform, but because he'd chosen to stay, to forgive, to build, and in doing so, he'd found peace. The song ended, and the crowd began to disperse slowly. Children ran back to the playground. Parents chatted over lemonade. Volunteers began folding chairs. Lily tugged on James's sleeve. "Come with me." She took his hand and led him to the base of the monument. From her small bag, she pulled out the folded flag Mrs. Dalton had given them. Carefully, reverently, she set it beside the monument's base, right beneath the new plaque that read, "Courage isn't loud. It's love that refuses to give up." She stepped back and looked up at her father, her smile radiant. "Now everyone has a hero here." Early morning light painted the sky soft pink and gold. James and Lily walked hand in hand down the quiet street, their footsteps the only sound except for birdsong overhead. The air smelled clean, fresh grass and blooming flowers. A month had passed since the memorial dedication. The park ahead looked different now, peaceful, alive. Daisies bloomed in neat beds around the monument, their white petals bright against the green grass. Someone had hung bird feeders in the oak trees, and sparrows flitted between branches, singing. "It's so pretty," Lily said. James squeezed her hand. "It is." They walked through the entrance, passing the new benches volunteers had built. Each one bore a small brass plaque. names of families who donated time or materials. The memorial stood at the center, polished and gleaming in the sunlight. The flag above it rippled gently in the breeze. James and Lily stopped in front of the stone monument, looking up at the names carved into its surface. Beneath them, a new inscription caught the morning light. Letters carefully engraved by James's own hands during late nights in Mr. Hollis's workshop. Courage isn't loud. It's love that refuses to give up. Lily read it aloud, her voice soft and reverent. James knelt beside her. You know what that means? It means being kind even when it's hard. That's right. She tilted her head, thinking. Dad? Yeah, sweetheart? I want to start something at school. What kind of something? A kindness club. Her eyes lit up. Where kids do nice things for each other. Like you taught me. James smiled, his heart swelling. I think that's a wonderful idea. Really? Really? She bounced on her toes. Can you help me? Of course. They sat down on the nearest bench, and James pulled a small notebook from his jacket pocket, the same one he'd carried overseas, now repurposed for grocery lists and reminders. He handed it to Lily, along with a pencil. Let's make a list, he said. Who do you want to invite? Lily scrunched her nose, thinking hard. Then she started writing, her letters careful and slightly crooked. Tommy Dalton. James raised an eyebrow. Tommy first. He said sorry, Lily said. And he's been really nice now. Good choice. She kept writing. Emma from art class. Marcus, who sits alone at lunch. Sophie, who shares her crayons. James watched her, pride warming his chest. She paused, tapping the pencil against her chin. What should we do first? What do you think? Maybe help Mr. Hollis clean the park every Saturday? That's perfect. And make cards for people who are sad. James nodded. You've got a good heart, Lily. She looked up at him, her eyes serious. I learned it from you. His throat tightened. You learned it from your mom, too. I know, she whispered. A familiar voice called from across the park. Morning, Porters. James turned to see Mrs. Dalton and Tommy walking toward them, carrying a flat of flowers. Mr. Hollis followed behind with a spade and watering can. Morning, James called back. Mrs. Dalton smiled, a real smile, soft and genuine. We're planting marigolds today. Thought they'd brighten the place up. They will, James said. Tommy ran ahead, clutching a small trowel. Can I help dig, Mr. Hollis? Sure can, son, the old postman said. Just don't dig up what we planted last week. Tommy grinned and set to work near the flower beds. Mrs. Dalton knelt beside him, showing him how to loosen the soil gently. Her movements were patient, careful. Nothing like the sharp, defensive woman who'd stood in that community meeting weeks ago. She glanced over at James. Thank you. He shook his head. You don't have to thank me. I do, she said quietly. You gave this town something we'd forgotten. You reminded us what it means to care. James didn't know what to say. She wiped her hands on her jeans and stood. Tommy talks about Lily all the time now. Says she's the bravest kid in school. Lily blushed, hiding her face against James's arm. She is, James said softly. Mrs. Dalton nodded, her eyes misty. Then she returned to the flowers, working alongside her son and Mr. Hollis. James watched them, neighbors who'd become friends, strangers who'd become family, healing, one flower at a time. Lily tugged on his sleeve. Can we go now? I want to show Miss Carter my list. Sure, sweetheart. They stood and walked toward the park entrance, the morning sun warm on their backs. James paused at the gate and looked back one last time. The memorial stood tall and proud. The flag above it gleamed. The flowers bloomed bright and hopeful. He looked up at the sky, endless blue stretching overhead, and he whispered, so quietly only the wind could hear, You'd be proud of her, Sarah, and maybe of me too. He felt it then, a warmth in his chest, gentle and sure. Not sadness, not longing, peace. He scooped Lily up, spinning her playfully. She shrieked with laughter, her arms flung wide. "Dad, put me down!" "Never," he teased, spinning her once more before setting her on her feet. She giggled, breathless and beaming. They walked home together, hand in hand, the sound of her laughter ringing through the morning air. Behind them, the memorial stood watch, a symbol of sacrifice, of love, of faith fulfilled. The flag rippled gently in the breeze, catching the sunlight. And above it all, the sky stretched wide and clear, endless, bright, and full of promise. I hope you enjoyed that story. Make sure to like and subscribe so that you do not miss out on tomorrow's story. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy.